everybody hear me? All right, cool. So I want to welcome everybody to the third annual ceremony of the Serendipitous Stone. Welcome to the Turquoise Museum. I'm the museum director, Jacob Lowry, and this, like I said, is the third time that we have done this. A few years ago, we started a partnership with the Zuni Rain Priest, and they take a artifact from the museum every year to use in their rain ceremonies, and today is when they are returning it to the museum. And so, for those of you that don't know, many of you do, the museum is the repository around the world for all things turquoise. And from the research and education, the artifacts, cultural histories around the globe, the Persian, the Mesoamerican, the Native American, all over the globe. And so this is something that is important to the way that we preserve our history and prolong our history. So without further ado, I want to introduce Seibert Nastashio. He is a Zuni Rain Priest, and he is the one that is tasked with caring for the Serendipitous Stone.
Seibert Nastashio Vecina. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope all is well, mind, body, and spirit. My name is Seibert Nastashio. I am of the Bear Clan and child of the Eagle Clan. And in Zuni, we live in a matriarchal society, so everything is, the first clan is based off of the mother's side first. So today, I am returning Monte Cristo, back to its proper owners, back to its home. And since 2021 is when we started this partnership, for lack of a better word, to help us as one people in hopes of resonating any kind of moisture and precipitation. But first of all, I would like to begin making you aware of where and how us Rain Priests, where we came from and who we are. And in our Zuni culture, during the evolution of our people, the father, our son, the Yato Kitachu, who we call Yato Kitachu, was the only one that was rising and setting alone before anyone existed. Knowing that we as people existed within the four underworlds in the core of Mother Earth, he summoned his children, the morning and the evening star, and he summoned them and asked them to go down into the four underworlds and reach the people within the four core underworlds and bring the people up into the daylight of where he is. Because according to our culture, there was no one that offered him prayer sticks like we do on the monthly or lunar eclipses or during the solstices. Also, no one was able to provide him cornmeal, offer him cornmeal, as well as turquoise within the cornmeal. So there are turquoise added to our cornmeals that we use when we do our prayers. And during that time, when he knew that the people were down there in the under the four worlds, he sent his two sons, the morning and the evening star, which you all probably know is one planet, right? It's one planet, but there seems to be two deities that exist within that planet. So he asked them to go down, and so when they reached the four underworlds, it was the Rain Priests that they had to talk to first. And even though there was in the first world, there's the four worlds, the first world is the world of Sut, where it's all darkness, nothing, you can see nothing. Second world is the world of gas. First world is Amnosian Dekwolin. Second world, Kolin Dekwolin, which is the world of gas. Third world is the world of algae, Awishaman Dekwolin. And then the fourth world is the pre-dawn world, where, when the sun is about to rise and the sky is all blue. That's the kind of world that last world was. So when the twin warriors reached the very bottom and in the world of Suit, that's where they got to encounter someone that they couldn't even see, but they could hear the individual. When they met this first individual, they could be able to hear him coming, and they could talk to him. They said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I come from the east," is what the individual replied. And they had asked him again who he was and what he was doing. And he says, "I'm going to go check my fields." Because at the time it was nothing but grains. Kawa wula is what we call all the different grains. And he said that's where he was going to check them. And the twin warriors, being as curious as they were, they wanted to see this individual. They wanted to see the individual. So they talked amongst each other and they decided to start a fire. When they started the fire, you could be able to see, with the light, they could see the individual. But the individual, never seen light, fell down in fear, covered its eyes. Because again, as you know, when you're in the darkness and you come into the light, your eyes hurt. But this individual, never seen light before, was so afraid, curled up in a fetal position and was laying there. And the two individuals, the twin warriors, got to be able to see the individual laying on the ground. This individual was covered in algae, webbed hands, webbed feet, huge bulging eyes, amphibian-like creature is what they saw. After seeing this, they decided to talk to each other, said, "Let's put the light up, for we are really scaring this individual." So they decided to put the light up, and then they asked the individual if they could take him to their leaders, to the village. So the individual took the two twin warriors to the village, and this is where they told them why they were bound within the four underworlds. They told the people that they were there because the Father, Son had summoned them to come down into the four underworlds, let him know that no one was within his daylight offering him prayer sticks, offering him cornmeal, offering him turquoise. So with that, informing the people told the two twin warriors that you need to go and talk to the Rain Priest. So with that, the two twin warriors ended up going talking to the Rain Priests, which were in all the different cardinal directions. So they went to the east, and they talked to the Rain Priest, they went to the north, they talked to the Rain Priest of the north. This is our head Rain Priest. And they told him why they were there, and why the Father, Son wanted our people out from the four underworlds into his daylighted world. So during this time, the Father, the head Rain Priest of the north, said, "Well, it depends on my younger brother. Whatever my younger brother says will be the way we will go. My younger brother is the Rain Priest to the west." So with this, they went and talked to all the Rain Priests, letting them know, making them aware of why the Father, Son. So first, they went to the north, the west, the south, the east, zenith, and nadir. Once they talked with all those Rain Priests, and then when the Rain Priests agreed that it was time for our people to come out into the daylighted world, then the people were summoned. They all gathered in one place, and they sat according to our culture for 4 years. But we don't know if that was 4 days, 4 weeks, 4 months, 4 years, 4 decades, centuries, we don't know. Everything is within fours. But once those 4 years were up, they would go into the next world, another 4 years. So the first world was the world of Sud. And the second world was the world of gas. Probably where natural gas comes from, we don't know. But within those different worlds, they spent 4 years, is what our culture and our stories, oral stories, nothing is written, has been told. So during those times, when the Rain Priests decided and said that it was okay for the people to come out, is when our people were allowed to come out from the 4 underworlds. But they had to figure out, how is it that we're going to come out the 4 underworlds? What was going to be utilized to come out into each world? But first, they also needed to find the pathway out of the 4 underworlds. So they had to summon those birds of prey. The first one that they summoned was the eagle, they called Kakali Shiwani, the eagle rain priest. They called upon the eagle to see about finding the pathway out of the 4 underworlds. The eagle tried its best, going in all directions, going out farther than what it normally does. Couldn't find the pathway. The next bird of prey that was summoned was the Chokya Shiwani, the marsh hawk. Marsh hawk was summoned to find the pathway. And the marsh hawk did its best, flew in all directions, couldn't find the pathway out, had to come back tired and inform the people that he wasn't successful in finding the pathway out. The next bird of prey that they summoned was the Anashala Shiwani, the chicken hawk, or what would be the goshawk. They summoned that hawk, and the hawk did the same thing, flew in all directions, up high, normal than what it normally would go, couldn't find the pathway out. Now the twin warriors are like kind of stumped, they've lost, and it's like, who is it that can be able to help us? Who is it that we can be able to ask for help from? Then they thought about it and said, well, maybe the hummingbird will be able to do it. Because the hummingbird's got a long beak, pretty strong, and likes to live around water, where moisture is. So they summoned this hummingbird, and the hummingbird also flew in all the different directions, going farther than what it normally would fly, what it migrates to. And again, the hummingbird came back, informing the people that it wasn't successful at all in finding the pathway out from the 4 underworlds. So with that, they were all like, who is it? Who is it that can be able to help us? Who can we call upon? They thought for a while, they sat alone for a while, and I believe the older brother says, I believe we know who we can answer. So they called upon what we call the Chumali, the cicada, the locust. They called upon the cicada And the cicada, was able to fly from the forest underworld, from the world of soup, going up high, was able to get into the second world. Same thing, was going up around, flying within the second world, which is the world of gas, called Kaya. And from there was able to also get into the third world, the world of algae. Here, the cicada was flying all over the place, looking for the pathway, and successful. He was able to get into the fourth underworld, the fourth world. And in the fourth world, he tried so hard, trying to find the pathway out, but ran out of energy. Couldn't muster up the energy to be able to go into the next world. But at least he's gone through the fourth world into the last world. So with that, he went back down into the very first world, the world of soup, where the others were waiting, and informed him that I have found the pathway out only to the fourth world, not all the way out, but I have found the pathway. So with that, knowing that, now the people had to figure out how is it, or not just the people, but the twin warriors, how is it that we can be able to get the people out? So in the first world, they thought about the seedling of a ponderosa pine tree. If you think about the ponderosa pine tree, pretty tall. So with that, they planted the ponderosa seedling, and they sang prayers were chanted. Rain Priest prayers were chanted for 4 decades. For 4 years, they said, Tepicoin, Awiten, Tepicoin, again, we know it was 4 weeks, 4 months, 4 years, 4 decades. But as those prayers were being sung and chanted, those like yourselves that were sitting in the front were able to listen and hear and learn the prayers. Those in the second row could hear here and there, some missing, and those in the third row, as they were waiting, could barely hear some prayers here and there because of the noise, the winds. The ones that were further back in the fourth row really couldn't hear any of the prayers because of the weeds, the grass rustling in the wind. So as this was going on, prayers were being learned by those individuals that were in the front, as well as maybe the second and some in the third, but in the fourth rows back, further back, they couldn't really hear anything. So with that, this is where our people started to understand that preserving our prayers and being able to learn and pass it on to one another was going to be very impactful. So within the next world, after getting out of the world of soot, they got into the world of gas. I was happy to see some Douglas fir out here, some fir trees. That was what was utilized in the next world. Douglas fir seedling was planted, and again, for the 4 years, 4 decades, whatever, the number 4, prayers were chanted, and again, those in front learned in the second row. And then again into the next world, into the third world of algae. This is where an aspen tree was utilized to climb out into the next world. In the fourth world, since the humming or the cicada wasn't able to get through and through the lighted world, is where they had to utilize what's called phragmite or bamboo. It's a reed, hollow, so they could use the hollow chambers to climb through into the lighted world. So this is where our rain priest came from the four underworlds. So we've had our rain priests in our culture since time immemorial. And the place, the evolution of our people is a place called Ribbon Falls within the corridor of the Grand Canyon. Each year, we as religious leaders are requested to make a trip down the corridor of the Grand Canyon in order to make sure that we maintain our connection to our Aboriginal lands. So we have to do documentations for the Bureau of Reclamations each year to make those visits. But just so you can understand where our rain priest came from was during the time of the evolution of our people. Not only am I a rain priest within our culture, but I'm also a Zuni language and cultural instructor for our school district. So this is something that we really emphasize and teach our children because we want them to understand where our origins are, our Aboriginal lands. And it's the whole story. If we want to talk about our migration story, it's very long, but I can try to shorten it. Our people separated after coming out from the four underworlds, leaving the Grand Canyon, coming eastward. Our people separated in a place called Walnut Canyon, just east of Flagstaff, about 9-10 miles east of Flagstaff. It was also called Diablo Canyon. In that place, our people were presented with eggs, 2 different eggs. One group chose, one was a plain white egg, and the other one was supposedly a bright, colorful egg, blue egg, some speckled egg, something like that. The ones that chose the white egg ended up migrating towards the south to the land of the everlasting sun, which are our ancestors that we have made connections with, the Mayans, all the way down to the Amazons. So that's why we have parrots' feathers in our culture. The other group that chose the colorful egg ended up coming eastward from Arizona, eastward, looking for the center of the world for themselves. When our people split, there was the shrines that we have, Ka'etonne, meaning for water, Chu'etonne, meaning for seedlings for corn, sustainable agriculture. These are the shrines that came up that Monty sits with. And the other one was She'eto, for ice. Those shrines ended up migrating up towards the north, from Arizona up towards the north. So that's why you'll see there's history of ruins within Utah. And those people that migrated towards the north ended up coming through by way of Bandelier National Monument. Bandelier is also a sacred place for us, for that's where our medicinal fraternities for a lot of our Puebloan tribes evolved from as well. So that's why Bandelier is a very secret site for a lot of our Puebloans. Those individuals ended up coming by way of through Sandia, through Jemez Mountains, even the pass, from the Valles Caldera. That pass you come through there is named the Jemez call it where the Zunis passed through because of the migratory route. They came away through the Sandia Mountains. Sandia Mountains, we also have several deities, home of several deities that belong to the medicine fraternities. They came back all the way back towards the west to Zuni. Another shrine that went towards the south, I heard someone in here earlier talking about cocoa bellies. cocoa belly dancers. There's a place where we have the flute player, and it's called Escondida Peak. This is near San Carlos, Arizona, the Apache Reservation. But that's where our flute player is. The ones that migrated towards the south in that direction came in that direction. So, you know, you have the Hohokam, you know, the Magiorim. Those are also our ancestors that ended up coming and stopping at those places, but they still haven't found the center of the world for themselves. So while migrating, the ones that went further south, coming by way through San Carlos, and then ended up living on top of El Morro, if you've heard of El Morro National Monument. Atop used to be a village. That's where our Zuni people also set. And the others coming through Sandias, coming back, going to Zuni. They met in a place called Nutria. So all those people that had separated had come back together. But they still didn't find the middle place. So they had to figure out, who do we summon to help us figure out where the middle place will be for us. With that, they called upon the water strider. Water strider was called upon, and the water strider was able to stretch out its legs all the way up north to the Baltic, west to the Pacific, east to the Atlantic, and down south to the Gulf of Mexico. Once it reached the legs of the water strider reached those waters, it set its abdomen down. Its abdomen landed where Zuni is to this day. So that's how Zuni was able to find out where the middle place is for our people. So to this day, we reside about 150 miles west of here, about 19 miles east of the Arizona state line. And we're the farthest Puebloan tribe here in New Mexico. Being out farther west, away from the settlement of the Spanish, here, we still have our culture. We have our kachina dances. We have our mass dances. And we as young men go through the rites of passage in order to be able to participate in those. Because we just don't go and do what we want to. There's always the rites of passage. As for here, along the Rio Grande, the Puebloans along the Rio Grande, they may have some of it. If they do have some of their kachina dances, you guys aren't even allowed, even myself as a Pueblo, are not allowed to observe what they do. They're so strict about it because everything that they used to have was taken away by the Spanish, and they were converted into Catholicism. So if you think about all the different pueblos along the Rio Grande here, majority of their festivities are based on the Catholic calendar, like name days, saint name days. One of my aunt lives in Amos. She's been married there for over 40 years, I believe. Yeah, and they're getting ready for their feast day. Come here on the 2nd of August. Here Wednesday, come Wednesday. But majority of the Puebloans along here, they don't have the same culture that we do have. I don't know if they have the rain priests that, like ourselves, that do go into isolation or not. But we as rain priests, we do not only pray for rain. We pray to try to prevent anything that's that can be detrimental, disastrous, like earthquakes, tornadoes. Those are things that pray for not to happen. We always wanted to pray for the well-being of all walks of life, not just for Zunis, everywhere, everywhere, even down to the lowliest creature, you know, because there's a purpose for individual, I mean, ticks, I don't know about ticks, but, you know, but there's always, you know, the ecosystem, there's always a purpose for a little insect. So we try to treat everyone equally. We do not put ourselves, or at least I do not put myself on the pedestal, even though we do have a hierarchical order. And so what Monty belongs to is from the shrines that came out during the evolution of our people. And I was just looking at the different rock formations. You know, I've actually done some trips down the Grand Canyon, the corridor. I've done 2 of them. The first time was back in like 2003, and I went back about 12, 13 years later. And over the years, the prayers that I have been taught and, you know, what I have learned, what I was bestowed, I was able to go down the second time into the corridor of the Grand Canyon and was able to decipher some of the petroglyphs, the pictographs that are within the corridor. And was such an awesome feeling because I was able to make the connections of the prayers that was taught by my grandfather. The other story that I was sharing with Jacob earlier was that my grandfather passed away in 2015, in April. A month later, they were doing that trip down the corridor of the Grand Canyon. And I happened to be at a presentation at a college in Zuni, the college, and the individuals that were going to lead the trip said one of the individuals had backed out and wasn't going to go. I was sitting in the back. I'll go. So they came calling on me about 5 days later, and they were like, "So you want to go for us?" I said, "Is there an opportunity?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, then I'll go." I'll go because I wanted to reconnect. I wanted to see what it was going to be like after a decade of learning the prayers. There's a place called Whitmore Panel where a wall, huge rock wall, shows the different colors, the layers of the 4 different worlds that what I just informed you about. You can see pictographs of people pulling each other out. A dark spot with half a body showing through, and they're pulling each other out. When our people first came out from the 4 underworlds, we were not like this, according to our stories, cultures. Again, webbed hands, webbed feet, tails covered in algae. Imagine having your genitalia on your forehead. That's the way I guess our people were when they first came out. Imagine having to put your head in the toilet. The twin warriors knew that people, if they were going to be like that, it wasn't going to be good. So during that time, they had flints, they had arrowheads. So they used their arrowheads to correct us the way we are to this day. If it wasn't for that, we don't know how we would be maybe some slimy creatures. But that's where the beginning of the Rain Priest came from, and to this day, it has been passed on. Back in the 90s, early 90s, when I had come out of the Navy, my grandfather wanted me to be next to him as a Rain Priest, because he knew his brother was dying from cancer. For about 10 years, he kept asking me if I could be next to him as a rain priest. And knowing, reading from a book like this, an original copy of one of those books, which he gave me, I read about the rain priests. Rain priests have to be very pure individuals. And knowing what I was going through, I wasn't pure. I was partying because I just come out of the service, you know, being a Navy sailor. I was doing things that, you know, shouldn't have been doing, but over the years, he kept asking me. In the winter of 1999, when they were having Shalako ceremonies, one of our biggest Kachina events in Zuni, I wasn't in Zuni. I was in San Diego with a girlfriend, a non-Zuni girlfriend. But this lady, her name's Dion Arvestead. She knew, she was a gifted lady. She knew that I had a purpose in life. So she took me up to the mountains of Julian, east of San Diego. And you know, you heard about the songs, tie a yellow ribbon around an oak tree. But these oak trees were huge. They're huge. She set me down by one of those oak trees and taught me how to meditate. She taught me meditating. During that deep meditation, I ended up somewhere looking at a mesa. I had been there before, but I didn't know where I was. I had seen this mesa before. Again, I didn't know what it was. There was one year my grandfather had asked me to assist him, to accompany him on his pilgrimage into the mountains to get different limbs and shrubs that we use to create prayer sticks for the rain people, the deities that we honor, pay homage to. He took me up on this mountain to trek. He took me on the trail because he wanted me to accompany him during the winter solstice because the trail is narrow and some of those areas had some steep drop-offs. And he didn't want to be by himself in case he happened to slip and lose his footing. So he had asked me to accompany him. So I did, and we got to a certain point where we say where the twins are. Rock formations, huge sandstone rock formations that look like two twins sitting next to each other. He set me down there and says, "This is as far as you can go, man. I can go the rest of the way by myself, but this is where you'll stay and wait." So this is the place where I was back at, seeing the image of the mesa, and this is the south side of our mesa in Zuni, which is called DY Mesa, or they call it Tawayalani, Corn Mesa. As I was looking at this mesa, I decided to take a look down. I took a look down to see where I was. And this is in my meditation. I was sitting in the top of a Douglas fir tree. My legs folded and crossed. Not on the ground, on the tip of a Douglas fir tree. That's when I knew that it was time for me to accept my grandfather's offer of becoming a rain priest. So since 2000, this was the winter of 1999, I called my grandfather, called my mother, told them of what I had experienced. My grandfather was a homebody, he never left the house to go anywhere. But he came to the airport to meet me. He knew that it was a special moment. So he came to greet me. So since 2000, winter of '99, we were bestowed, not only myself, but my cousin, who sits with us, we were bestowed the rights and responsibilities of the Rain Priests. So to this day, as families help each other by accepting those responsibilities, and we hope that none of our culture will become extinct, and we can carry this on for who knows how long. So with this partnership, just being able to find Monty, it's right here, Monty. It's gonna go. You know, it was something that was pretty awesome. I will never forget the day when I went around the corner and I could feel the energy, and just to turn around and see that. And my first remark was, "Hey, that's one of our thunderballs." Joe then behind me goes, "No, that's one of my turquoise stones." So since then, I explained to Joe Dan, Mr. Larry here, about what the thunderballs are to us as rain priests. And we've had those since time immemorial. And to be able to see something, such a unique specimen like this, I was like, "Can I have it?" I asked him, "Can I have it?" He says, "No." But he says, "When it comes time, contact me, we'll talk about it." I sent him a copy of my original writing. This is a condensed writing that I did, but the original writing is mentioned the fact, that I had to, it was kind of funny the way I had asked, foolishly, not with no shame. But to be able to have, for him to have the trust to be able to allow me to take Monty, and for Monty to be part of those shrines from since time immemorial. And there is an image that I believe Jacob, if we can show, the image here will be, this is from at least 100 years ago, this illustration that he had up there.
We'll try starting it over.
The illustration here shows our shrines that were set up during the winter time. So it's not like it is normally during the summer, when we do go into isolation. You will see us all dressed in white, nothing of various colors. And here you see the shrines. So these are the different stones that came out from the four underworlds, from the corridors of the Grand Canyon. So we've got rocks that I was actually reading earlier just to kind of make myself a little bit more clear. And a lot of these rocks that come from the Grand Canyon are being dated to 1.8 billion years ago. So just thinking of that, our fathers, our shrines, you'll only see a little bit of them, but this is the medicine water that is set to use to help resonating the moisture. But this is still the same way as it is. We set the shrine up as it is. And these, what are standing back here, are the mothers of those that belong to the medicinal fraternities within our families. So these are all set like this, and again, this was during the winter time. There's a flute right there. So there's certain things that I can't really talk about because of our culture being esoteric, but this is already in public domain, which is in the booklet here. And again, this was that was taken during winter solstice. The whole picture, there's actually a little peach tree, a tree, dry tree with some cotton balls on it that represents a peach tree in hopes of resonating peach crop for the coming year. When we set up our shrine like this, we cannot put Monty amongst the brothers, because if we do that, I will never be able to bring Monty back. And we came to agreement that when Monty comes, he sits behind everyone here, but he has his own special place. It's not by himself. There are other things, that other relics that we set beside it, so it's not alone. When I went down the corridor of the Grand Canyon in 2015, my grandfather had passed away in April, and this was in May. Before my grandfather passed, he had always talked about how his brothers, some of his elders had passed on, and when they're ready to come home, they come home in the spherical form, like Monty. During my trip, the second night before we were going to exit the river, I was setting up a place for myself to take a bath along the river, the Colorado River, this set in stone, so I could just like wade in a little pool. As I was doing that, I noticed a nice round, like thunderball in the water. That was my grandfather, ready to come home. Just a month later, picked it up and brought him home. Has his own place now amongst the hierarchy. Not further back, but further close towards these other shrines. That's where he placed him. This year, my brothers lost their father a month before. The father wasn't a rain priest. He belonged into a medicine fraternity. But as we set up our shrines, when we set up all the different rocks that we have, we set them up in a certain way. The first, the hierarchical order, then however we set up this the way it's set. This year, we put a stone that was black in color, about maybe 3-4 inches long, narrow, kind of. Never thought of it. As we were setting our shrines, there's a straight line of cornmeal and the stones are set. As we were setting them, we never realized how the stone that we had set, what it looked like. On the second day, I started noticing my cousin, we're sitting next to each other as you are here, but he was more turned away from me, looking at the row of stones, the different stones or deities, and I was like wondering. At this time, it was his turn. He was the lead rain priest, and this year he was leading the lead rain priest, and I was wondering what was going on, and he had never recited the prayers when we closed our ceremonies, and I was hoping that that's what he was thinking of. But he kept watching this the shrines, the way they were set. On the last day, before we were going to come out, he comes up and says, "Never set this stone like this before." And he says, "No, but I've been watching it." I said, "I've been noticing it for the past 2 days. And I've been watching you. Are you okay?" And he goes, "I'm okay, but I want to show you something." So he takes me to where the shrine was set up, and he takes me, "Can you see what's sitting here?" And I said, "Yes." And he was like, I noticed that a couple days ago, even though I'm sitting from afar. He says, you know what that is? And I said, yes, I do. And he says, and he asked me, what was our father's clan? And I said, Dogwood, Itchigwe. But there's a sub-clan, Crow Clan. And he goes, what was he? And I said, he was Crow Clan. The rock that we were looking at was in the form of a crow. So we've taken a good look at it, and this is like a Vishnu schist rock. You know, that's one of the oldest rocks that comes out from the Grand Canyon. Vishnu schist in the shape of a crow. The wings, you can see the grooves of the wings. And we were like, well, your father's here. You know, he may have left in physical form, but spiritually he's here. So that morning when our family came in, our family is not allowed in our ceremonies at all. But when it was time for us to come out, our families came in. And before we closed everything, we wanted to show our family that he was amongst us. We wanted the younger children to understand and believe that things do occur phenomenally. So this is something I just wanted to share with you, because there are certain things that when I'm with Monty, there's certain things that occur that is like, whoa, where did that come from? You know? And my son lives in Arkansas, and he was pointing that out when we came to get him and we were taking him back to Zuni. But this is where we are, and we hope this will continue for over the years, as long as Mr. Domain allows it, as well as I'm still alive and my brothers hopefully will continue it. But I believe this is where I'll end. There's a lot to tell, but time limitations. And thank you.
Thank you. So, as we know, the reason that we're here is for him to place the stone back in the display. So he's going to take it out of the pouch, and he's going to place it back in the display.
Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, when Joe Dan first showed me Monty, there was an anomaly that he found as well. But the way the turquoise it shows here, somehow they found a map. Was it Google Map somewhere?
I don't know. It's as weird as the rest of it.
Yeah, it was so weird because this map didn't have the border lines of the Zuni reservation. You know how they have the straight lines around it? But when he showed me the map, it was exactly the way this is, the turquoise, the way it shows. And I was like, how in the world, where'd you find that? And he was like, I'm funny about things like that. I was like, okay. But anyway, that was one of the things that really kind of reassured us that it was meant to be. So Monty's coming back home. Thank you again for allowing Monty to come and sit with us during our prayers. And I believe Jacob said he got rained out and during his putt-putt golf game last night. So I'm glad, and I was glad to see ponds of water coming from Zuni this way through the Zuni mountains. I mean, these weren't puddles, these were ponds. So to see something like that, you know, even though it may not be near where I am, at least somebody got moisture somewhere. You know, so to us, that's success. Thank you.
Thank you. So as we talk about the alliance of the Serendipitous Stone, before we end, I want to give our curator a chance to talk about how this all came to be and what the future of the Alliance is going to look like.
So you guys were mainly here to hear cyber talk, so the mine will be short. Got it? All right, so it is incredible that y'all are here. It's incredible that Cyber is here and Monty has returned. So that's all good. Full cycle. I want to tell you a little bit about the Serendipitous Stone originally and give you some background as far as geologically. The Monte Cristo name came from the Wilson family, who actually discovered this deposit of turquoise in 1951 in Nevada. And the Monte Cristo was actually renamed, what, 3 years ago? 3 years ago, I don't know the name it was renamed to, but this one stays the same. It was in our family collection in the rough, and I found it, and I guess in 2005 is when I windowed it to see the turquoise and use it in the publication of one of our books that we did. It published in 2010, Turquoise, a fascinating gemstone in the world. And so it has cool value as far as a stone because it's spherical, but when you actually read what Seibert believes in the power of the stone, they believe that this type of relic are some of their most sacred relics that they have. This is the only turquoise one, which is kind of cool. And correct me if I'm wrong, you guys roll it? Is that part of the two on the cornel?
No,
No?
no, there's only one that is meant for that purpose.
One that does that?
One, yes.
Right.
If there's anything bad that's gonna be happening, will be shown by that stone, because it'll roll on its own,
Right.
so.
So there's purpose in all of the different categories, and so they also believe that the spherical stones, the thunderballs, are your forefathers reincarnated
And ancestors,
in
yes.
ancestors.
Those that were rain priests prior.
Right. So there's a lot of history that goes into it. I went back when he was telling me all the stories. You know, there's lots of history that is rewritten to be mystical or powerful and things like that. But if you take the time to read how Seibert wrote the story, it is vulnerable, it is real, and it all parallels exactly what was in a book written in 1901 about their ceremony. So it's not something that is embellished. And I thought that had great beauty to it in the way that he wrote it personally in his the history that began as the stone would be known as Monte Cristo. So we are appreciative to be in alliance with Seibert and the Rain Priest. I did set up a rule that was nice and simple. Nobody can touch it, including me, unless the Zuni Rain Priest allow it. And so if you think that that's ridiculous, we had a woman show up 6 months ago and required that we give it to her so that she could go save the world with it. And I told her, I said, I can't touch it. See, it says I can't touch it. And she's like, well, call whoever and ask them. So I said, okay. So I called Cyber. I texted Cyber and said, hey, there's a woman that would like to take the Monte Cristo stone and save the world. And he goes, you know my answer. So what I love about it, and Jacob and I both talking with Cyber, is most people never get to hear the story that you all just heard. And most people, when they do hear a story like that, it's not specifically from a person who is honorable and who is not trying to make money. And so there's a beauty to the ceremony that allows him to bring some of his culture and history, and he's sharing his life to us because of Monty. And so I tell people in the museum world when they get upset with me, which is often, I said, was I wrong to allow a perfect stranger to take home an artifact from the museum? Their answer is yes. And then I'll ask them, well, was I really wrong to allow this stranger to touch it with their hands and have other people touch it? And they say, absolutely, you're wrong. And I said, when you hear his story and the generations and the sharing and the trust and the sharing of the cultures and the respect, I'm not wrong. When we get to be human and we actually share with one another and we trust one another, that is how we share, that's how we grow. And so we want the Monte Cristo Stone to be culturally shared in history and stories, because that's how we pass down our histories, like Cybert was telling us. And so that we appreciate you guys giving that value today and coming. And I'll let you talk about who was here earlier and how that will work. That's on this evening. Anyways, thanks for coming out, guys.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions before we wrap everything up?
How did you get the name Monte Cristo?
Cybert, you want to answer that?
Monty?
So Monte Cristo was the name of the turquoise mine that the turquoise came from in Nevada. And then when the Serendipitous Stone name is what Cybert gave the stone, was calling it the Serendipitous Stone.
And you need to read the story on the wall,
Okay.
and it'll give you that comprehension of why he named it that. It's long. It's really good, but it's 3 pages. How's that?
His original was 9? 7.
And I just gave it to him.
Is there any other
And
questions?
so just another question, when you came in and felt that stone, were you just here by invitation, or were you just here as a
Just
visitor?
there as a visitor.
And you could tell right away?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, I could feel the energy, belonging to the deities that I belong to. Sometimes there are things that I'm shown, or even words coming out of my mouth that I don't know of where it came from, because it seems like those spiritual deities are what's using me to voice whatever needs to be known. So sometimes it can be strange, even with my family, when where there may be a certain situation where critical advice needs to be given. Sometimes it comes out of me, and I always wonder where it comes from. And then I'll sit with my mom, and it's like, "You never told me that. You guys never told me that. Where?" And she was like, "It's your fathers. Your fathers are showing you, or putting the words within you to express." So it can be tricky at times. Sometimes you just wonder.
He talks about, in the story, he talks about the first time he held it and what he felt, so it's pretty cool.
The first time I held it, my sister was here, actually, she videotaped it. I was gonna ask her to send that videotape, but when I first held it, I could feel the source of energy, and I could feel it just beginning from the crown of my head all the way to the tip of my toes, and I'm standing there, and I'm like literally shaking, and my body is covered in goosebumps all the way, from head to toe. So there is some really pretty strong energy within the stone. And the longer version that I shared with you, I actually shared with you, in that writing, I actually shared about how my brothers felt, just the awe that they had, like, I know the younger one was like, "Where did you find such a specimen?"
These are the Brother Rain Priests.
Right, Brother Rain Priest. There's 3 of us. Well, there was 4 of us, but unfortunately, one individual decided to relinquish his rights, and I was like, okay, that's what you wish. Being a rain priest is not an easy thing to be. We do make a lot of sacrifices. There are times when we are left out of certain events, that could be very sentimental to family, but due to our religious obligations, we are left out of those kind of situations, so, but, then life goes on. So, yeah.
So, like I said at the beginning, one of the missions of the museum is to preserve and prolong history. And preserving history is making sure that something like this is available for view and for understanding of its history. But then there's also the prolonging of history, that if we leave it locked in a box, then that's the rest of its history, is being locked in a box. And so this alliance with the Zuni Rain Priest is part of the prolonging of history, of actually being able to add to history, because what happens today, tomorrow is history.
Right.
And so that is part of the mission of the museum. So as we continue, each year Seibert will come and pick up the Serendipitous Stone, take it back to Zuni, use it in their ceremonies for about 2 weeks. Right?
At least 2 weeks, yeah.
And then bring it back and have it on display here for others to learn about the history. So now you're welcome to head through this door into the museum and view the museum. If you would like to talk to any of us, you're welcome to. But that's going to conclude the ceremony. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.